What is up? What is going on, everybody? I am back with another Seattle Mariners video. I figured with the big series coming up against the Astros here, that a video needed to be made just to kind of talk about what the team's going through, my thoughts on it, and just a chance for me to vent and to get some things out there. As truthfully, despite everything, despite the struggles, the Mariners are heading into a series here against the Astros that if they win it, there's a very good chance they are going to be in the postseason. It is, in fact, probably be about 80%, 75% chance. If they sweep this series, they're virtually a lock, almost regardless of what happens against Texas. So there's a very decent chance this team is in a really good spot to be in the postseason for back-to-back seasons for the first time since 2001. It's very possible. It's not like it's going to take some crazy, you got to win 4, they got to lose 4 type thing. Just got to win a series here and you're in good shape. Now, that's been a lot easier said than done for this team over the month of September. And it's kind of put me, I think a lot of fans in a frustrating position right now. Because, I was watching football yesterday and I see the Denver Broncos give up 70 points to the Dolphins. And I see the Broncos people doing post-game recaps, and it's just a mess. It's a mockery, essentially. They've got the jokes flying, they've got everything going, and it makes sense. They're 0-3 and gave up 70 points. And the reason I bring that up in regards to the Mariners is that the Mariners are in one of those really tough spots. Just as a fan, as someone that's making videos about them, this is just about me. I'm talking for everybody here because they're good. Like they're 84 and 71. I mean, that's a good record. That's a good team. Their run differentials, I believe, plus 100 something. That is a really solid baseball team. This is not a bad team. So it's hard. I can't come on here and be like, oh, they stink, they suck. Content would be easier to make if this team was the Royals or the A's or something like that. It would be easier for me to make that kind of content because it would just be the same thing happening every night, frustrating losses every night. But it hasn't been that. There's been some lows, that's for sure. But this is also, despite everything, probably the second or third best team we've seen in 20 years. Now, it shows you how pathetic this franchise has been for the 2000s, essentially. But it's what makes this so difficult. And honestly, like, in some regards, I understand some fans' frustration with the Astros losing too, because it's given us this hope. And it's like the Mariners can't win games, but they also just can't die. You know what I mean? It's like one or the other. So it's like get better and start winning some baseball games or go away. And I think that's how a lot of fans feel right now with this baseball team is that it's either like, if Houston would have swept Kansas City, you feel like you're put out of your misery, but they didn't. So now we got to go these next 3 games with hope, with optimism, because there's still a shot. There is still a shot, and it hasn't gone away yet. And it makes it very frustrating because this team is kind of stuck in that unknown, where they're not bad enough to be funny bad, but they're not good enough to just be cruising and pumping our fist every night either. They're kind of, I don't want to say stuck in neutral because they're better than 500. They've been a decent baseball team. But I think that's, where a lot of the frustration probably lies for people is that it's just not, they're not taking off. They're staying stuck in this neutral, but then the teams that are with them are also doing the same thing. So listen, I would encourage people to, you've sat through 20 bad years of it. I think you can get through 3 more games of this. And like I said, despite everything, they have a chance. They have a chance here to beat Houston and to be in good shape to make the postseason. Well, will they do anything in the postseason? If they get there, that's kind of the other, I think people are, and I get that too. The sentiment is very much like, well, Jay, fine, they may get in, but this doesn't look like a team that's going to do any damage in the playoffs. That's fair. I'd be lying if I didn't share some of those sentiments myself a little bit with this team. But you got to remember, if they get in, that probably means they have a pretty decent homestand to finish the year. At least, at minimum, 4-3. You would have to figure. I don't think there's any way you could do much worse than that, unless you beat Houston 2 out of 3 and Houston gets swept in Arizona or something, which I guess is possible. So, but for the most part, I think you have to win 4 or 5 games here. Let's say 4. So you're going to have to play a little bit better baseball to maybe at least give the fans and us some sense of like, okay, they played better. Remember in September last year, they didn't play that great of baseball. They finished off with a nice little homestand against the A's and Tigers, but they did not go in with a great September last year, and they managed to still win a playoff series. And then I know that we didn't want them to lose in the LDS, and that stunk. But they were also in all three games an out or two away from beating the Astros. So you don't know. You get in, you've got Kirby, you've got Castillo, you've got Logan, 1, 2, and 3. That is a good enough 1, 2, 3 that as long as the offense can just get you a few runs here and there, you should be able to be in games and win games. Their first playoff series would likely be against the Twins, a team that the Mariners have gone 4-3 against this season. I'm not trying to get way ahead, but I'm just saying very possible Mariners could go into Minnesota and win 2 out of 3. And then you've got the LDS and you go from there. Right now, do I think they would be able to beat Texas or Baltimore in the DS? No, this team isn't playing good ball, so it's hard to say that. But I don't think it's also the craziest thing ever that this team in a 5-game set could beat either one of those teams with some home games. So I would, and look at last year. You had teams like the Phillies that got in as a wild card that were not playing great September baseball, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that. They kind of got in, I think, 87, 88 wins. They beat the Cardinals. They beat the Braves, you know what I mean? And they beat the Padres, and they're in the World Series. The Padres were way behind the Dodgers last year. They finished 16, 17 games back of them. Beat them in the NLDS, got to the NLCS. When you play short series, anything's possible. The Royals just swept the Astros in a 3-game series. No one would favor the Royals to beat the Astros in a postseason series, but that's essentially what they just did yesterday. So, and the Mariners certainly aren't nearly that bad. They're capable. So I would say that if you get in, you never know what can happen. I ideally love to win the division. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand there. I've had some people ask me about front office coaching staff stuff, and I just want to get this. I've said in some post-game videos, but I feel like another video is kind of all over the place, and I'll preview the series a little bit. I'm going to wait till the season is over, and I know if you've heard that before, like, Jay, we know, we get it. But I'm going to wait for the season to end because this season still has a lot of weird directions it can go. And it might look bleak right now, but we could be celebrating next weekend this team getting in the playoffs. It could be a disaster and they fall flat on their face and don't get in. If they don't get in, there's going to be conversations about Scott, about Jerry and Justin, in my opinion, too. And we already know the ownership group doesn't care all that much either, but that's not much we can do. Well, not much we can do about any of it, but definitely nothing you can do about ownership. That's just is what it is. It's something they have to work around. That doesn't mean I think everybody should be fired, but I do think that if they don't get in, there is conversations to be had. There's conversations to be had if this roster was in good enough shape to be able to get in. There's questions about, and there's some things out of their control with injuries, but essentially what I'm saying is I will dive into all that once the season is over, because this season could still end in a World Series win, and it could end in awful fashion, not even going to the playoffs. Like, that's the spectrum. So it's hard for me to give a take on a team and say people should be fired, and then they go on and run the playoffs and it looks stupid. So we'll wait and see when the season ends where the dust settles. So the Mariners begin. Let's get back to baseball here. The Mariners are going to begin a 3-game set with the Houston Astros in Seattle. The Astros are probably very happy to get out of Houston. Their own stadium has been a bit of a house of horrors for them. So for the Astros, it's probably a little bit of a weight off their shoulders getting to play on the road. And sometimes that happens with teams. You struggle in front of your home fans, and it's nice to get out on the road, and the pressure and expectations go down a little bit. But the Astros have not been playing good ball. If you think the Mariners aren't playing good ball, at least the Mariners have lost to the Dodgers and the Rangers here, good baseball teams. Be nice if they could have won 1 or 2 games. The Astros have been losing to Kansas City and Oakland, and Baltimore as well. Baltimore is a good team. So the Astros have really been laying eggs against teams that they should be beating. They really should be at least minimum winning these series. They haven't been able to finish it. So for as frustrated as Mariner fans are right now, Astros fans are even more in that area. So Justin Verlander goes for the Astros tonight against Luis Castillo. Verlander's still been solid this year, 3.44 ERA, 131 strikeouts. Walks are still fairly low, I think 40-something. Certainly not the same pitcher of yesteryear. This isn't necessarily the same dominant Verlander we've seen in the past, but still a guy that has given the Mariners fits throughout his career, um, and certainly not had a lot of issues dominating the Mariners outside of a few games. There was a couple last year, including the playoffs, where the Mariners got to him. And I believe this is his first start against the Mariners this season. Verlander's been kind of up and down in September. He had a start against the Yankees where he went 6 innings, 6 earned runs. A start against Houston, start in Texas when he went 7 innings of 1-run ball, 7 innings, 5 runs against the A's, did have 7 strikeouts, no walks in that game, and then 6 innings, 3 earned runs against Baltimore. Strikeout to walk ratio all been good in September. He's only walked 3 batters in those 4 starts with 21 strikeouts. So, those numbers for Verlander have been pretty solid. So the ERA might be a little inflated, but bottom line is he's been hit pretty hard in September. So I definitely think it's possible this lineup can get to him. Castillo's been on a pretty good roll so far in his month. Let's take a look at Castillo in September. In fact, I think they've won every Castillo start in September. Let me pull up the game logs here for Luis. Yeah, so far in September, Luis has struggled against the Mets. That was in September, 5 innings, 5 earned runs, but 6 shutout innings against Tampa, 6 innings, 2 earned runs against the Angels, 7 innings and 2 earned runs against the A's. The walks have been a little high, but 26 strikeouts and 12 walks for Luis Castillo so far in September. And the ERA has obviously been lower than Verlander's. Castillo's got to be on his game tonight. You absolutely need Luis Castillo to be that ace, those 6 shutout innings. The one good positive, I guess, you can take from that Rangers series is your bullpen should be pretty well rested. You should be able to use all your big guns in this series. And hopefully Castillo can get you 6 or 7, and you can find a way. George Kirby goes tomorrow against Christian Javier. Kirby bounced back with a nice start against the A's. It's been a bit of an up and down September. Wednesday is going to be a tough one. Bryce Miller goes against Framber Valdez. I will say the Mariners hit Valdez well the last time they faced him, and Bryce Miller pitched well against Houston last time they faced him. The Mariners have the one thing they've done this year is beaten the Astros. I believe they're 8-2 against the Astros. Let me do the math. 2-1, 5-2. Yeah, 8-2 against the Astros this year. So it's probably like the one monkey on the back that they've actually kind of gotten off this season was the Astros. That doesn't mean that they're destined to dominate them in the series, but it is something they've been able to do. So, I got to find a way to get 2 out of 3 here. You're facing 2 righties and 1 lefty. I'd like to see more Mike Ford at first base here and maybe give Ty some time. I don't know. I mean, there's just the thing with the lineup is this, and they scored 8 runs yesterday, so I shouldn't be harsh on them. There's only 28 guys on this roster. There's only so many people you can use. So, I've heard bench Ty, bench Gino, bench, Dylan Moore shouldn't be playing. Haggerty shouldn't be playing. I mean, someone has to play. Like, eventually, out of all those guys, you can't just have none of them in there. You know what I mean? Somebody has got to be playing. There's a shelf being built behind me so we can see the reflection. And that's what that is. So if you guys are seeing that, just so you know, nothing is creeping up behind me. But where was I? Yeah, I mean, some of these guys have got to play. Like, you can't bench everybody. You need them to have one final hot streak. You need Ty France to finish with 1 hot streak. Gino Suarez to finish with 1 hot streak here. Julio to get on 1 more tear. And you just hope it happens here. Like, listen, it is hard to be super optimistic right now. I'm even struggling doing it. I'm trying to, get myself hyped up for this series. I really am, because baseball can turn on a dime. We have seen teams go from losing streaks to winning streaks like that. It is a weird sport. It's momentum is as good as your next day starting pitcher. They come out and win the first 2 games in the series, and I think it's going to be as good as we've all felt in September. The good news is we'll know after these 3 games. We should have a pretty decent idea of what's left for this team after these 3 games. Win the series, feel pretty good. Sweep it, you feel great. Lose the series, need a lot of help. Get swept, I think it's over. So we know exactly what's needed. If you're ready to be put out of your misery, then you've finally, I think, come to the pinnacle with these 3 games. If you want to have a little hope, then it's right there in front of them, in front of their home fans. I think they have pitching matchup advantages for the first two nights, or at least they're even enough with the Astros. And you hope that Houston stays cold here. You hope that they come in cold and the bats stay quiet and the pitching struggles. The Astros did rearrange their rotation for this series previous to Kansas City, which was smart. That you would hope that your other guys could beat the Royals. They couldn't. I think the Mariners did it fine. I don't think Castillo should have pitched yesterday, because if Castillo pitches yesterday and they lose, now you're stuck with Wu and Miller pitching in this series, which would have been tough. I think after the first two games of that Rangers series, this series became the most important one. And this one against the Astros is the one that's going to matter the most. So I think it's a good thing you've got Castillo and Kirby going in the first two. Love to have Logan in game three, but there's just nothing you can do about that. He would have to pitch on 3 days rest, which is not going to happen. So Bryce will hopefully be able to get him going on Wednesday. Here it is. All right. So it's time to go get it if you're the Mariners. No more that they have used up. I said that through their final 10 games, 7-3 would be a lock. 6-4 puts you in pretty good shape. 5-5, there's questions. Anything above 7-3 would have been amazing. And they've used up those 3 losses already. So time to turn on some wins here. They've been fortunate. Some other results that's still right there in front of them. And let's see if they can go out, win a series, and get into the dance. So remember, you guys hit like, comment, and hit comment, and subscribe. I will see you guys tonight for the post game. Hopefully we're talking about a win, and I will see you guys later. Go Mariners. Peace.